Buying a home can feel so intimidating. You Google, you ChatGPT, you ask your friends and family, and everyone seems to have a different recommendation on what you should be doing to prepare to become a homeowner and what the process looks like. But look, I got you. You do not need to do all that. In this video, we are going to learn exactly what it takes to become a homeowner here in Texas, specifically in the Fort Hood area from Waco to Austin. Now look, this is going to be a long video and with a lot of information, but feel free to pause it, rewind it, speed up, slow down as much as you need to, and always remember that I am here to help you. So if you have any questions, and I do mean any questions, please make sure you reach out to me. To follow along, there is going to be a link in the description below to download your copy of this buyer guide, and you are definitely going to want a copy to walk through. So without further ado, let's get into it. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. So if you're new here, my name is Samantha Hammonds. I'm a realtor here in the Central Texas area. This is all my contact information right here. Feel free to reach out, but we're going to go ahead and just keep moving on because we got a lot of information to cover. Now on this page, you're going to see an overview of the process. We're going to start right here on the financing step because as you can see, step 2, right after you speak to me as your realtor, is to get pre-approved. So we're going to talk about the uncomfortable stuff. We're going to talk about financing. I know it gets a little awkward. Nobody likes to talk about money, but we have to get comfortable with what your finances look like so that we can make sure we are putting you on the perfect path for you and home ownership. Okay, so everything you need to know about financing. The very first step is preparing your finances. How much house can you actually afford? Technically, this can actually be a loaded question because the lender is going to say you can have a debt to income ratio of 40 to 50%. Now, 40 to 50% includes your new mortgage plus all your other debts added up. And then about 40 to 50% of that is what they can say is your debt to income ratio. Now, for example, if you have $8,000 a month gross income for like your average W-2 salary position, and you have $1,200 a month worth of debt, so car payments, student loans, credit card payments, etc., they're going to say your monthly maximum payment for your mortgage is going to be about $2,700 to $2,800 because when you add that $2,700 to $2,800 plus $1,200 a month, multiply that by 2, that's going to give you your $8,000 a month. So that puts you at about a 50% debt to income ratio. Now that's what the lender says, but what's most important is what is your comfort number? Because the lender may say you can afford one thing, but maybe you know based on how much money you want to save, other debts or future expenses you know are coming up, you might know that 40-50% is still more than you want to pay. So that is what we're going to look at. No matter what the lender says, we want to know what you are comfortable paying. And once you know this number, we're going to make sure that we are viewing homes that fit within that number. Now, here's where it gets a little weird. You may have a house that is $300,000 in one neighborhood, another neighborhood that's $280,000, and that $300,000 house is actually cheaper on a monthly payment than that $280,000 house because of taxes. Now that's just a random example, random numbers, but the taxes and the home insurance are going to vary from property to property. So we are going to make sure when we're looking at each house, we're looking at each individual property, each individual tax rate, and checking what that mortgage number is going to be and making sure that we are staying inside that comfort level and we're not stretching outside of that. Something to keep in mind, and most realtors I find don't tell their clients this, is your monthly mortgage will actually go up every single year. Now, it shouldn't go up too dramatically, but your taxes are going to increase year over year, and most likely your property insurance is going to increase year over year, which means that you could be increasing your mortgage every single year. Now, with that being said, that means we don't want to buy at the very tip top of your budget, right? We don't want to overwork and overstress your budget. Now, unless you know that you're going to for sure be getting a raise, you're going to be for sure getting a promotion, or some kind of bonus or whatever, and you can comfortably afford by at the very top of your budget. But we usually don't like to take that risk. So we want to make sure there's room and comfort in the budget so that if the mortgage goes up $100 or $200 next year, you are not stressing and freaking out about it, right? So those are some things to keep in mind. Now, especially if you buy new construction, this is something we'll talk about one-on-one if you get to that point, but new construction, your mortgage is always going to start out very low 90% of the time, because they don't have the land factored into the taxes until next year. And then you're going to see it go up crazy amount. So keep that in mind. Again, we will cross those bridges when we get there, and we will make sure you know what your monthly payment's going to be after the improvement of the property, not just what the lender says it is in that moment. Okay, moving on to how much cash do you need on hand? Now, this is super important, and I don't want these numbers to scare you, okay? Don't think that, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to buy a house because these numbers are so outrageous. Trust me, we've got a plan for you. Okay, so you're going to want an estimate about $5,000 cash on hand to begin the process. Now, yes, sometimes we can negotiate these numbers to be less, But ideally, if you have about $5,000 in your bank account to start with that you can spend on these expenses, you're going to be in a pretty good place to start. So this is going to include your earnest money deposit, which can sometimes be as low as $500 and sometimes even lower on new construction, or average of like 1% of sales price. It really just depends on the property. Sometimes we put 500, sometimes we put the percentage of the property. It just depends on each individual house and the market conditions. The next thing is your option fee. We will talk about this, by the way, later on, exactly what is earnest money, exactly what is option money. But in short, earnest money is your good faith deposit. Option money is what allows you to back out of the contract if something were to come up within a certain time frame. That could be anywhere between $100 on the low end and $500 on the high end. Your inspection fee is going to be about $400 depending on the company you use. Termite inspection, which is required on a VA loan, that's going to be about $100. Your appraisal fee can be $550 to $750, usually paid at closing as a part of your closing cost, but some lenders do require you paid up front. And then your other inspections, so say you need septic inspection, pool inspection, radon gas inspection, just random inspections, right? If you need any additional inspections, we'll just put an estimate of $500 in there for that. It could be more depending on what you need. So that's pre-closing. That's what you need just to get the process started. Now, your closing day fees, these are going to be funds that you need ready on closing day. So if you're pulling these funds from like a 401k or something, or some kind of retirement or investment account, make sure you make the arrangements like the moment you go under contract to have that money ready and available. So this is going to be your down payment. Oh, and make sure your lender knows too, because your lender is going to need to know where the money is coming from. So your down payment is going to be anywhere from 0 to 20%. So $0 down on a VA loan or a USDA loan, and up to 20% down or more if you wanted to put more down on, FHA, conventional, other types of loans. You're going to have 12 to 15 months of a tax and an insurance escrow. Now that number is going to vary. Then you're going to have lender origination fees, which is going to be 1 to 3% of sales price, plus the cost of the interest rate. Ask every lender you talk to for a fee sheet. And that is going to break down the cost that you're actually paying to get that loan and that interest rate. Because some lenders will quote you an interest rate, but they will just fail to mention that you're actually paying for that interest rate, because sometimes you actually have to pay for the interest rate. Not everyone can actually just get the market rate. It's confusing. I know that's the lender side of things, but just make sure we're asking for a fee sheet. Then you're going to have title fees and title policy. And so on an estimated $250,000 house, you're going to be looking about $8,000 to $10,000 plus your down payment, plus buyer's agent compensation, if applicable, which we will discuss that later as well. Don't let that freak you out just yet. On a $250,000 loan. That's about how much you're looking at cash to close. So I know that sounds crazy. Like, I know a lot of people don't just have 10, 15K sitting in the bank, right? Obviously, the more you have saved before you get ready to buy a house, the better. But please bear in mind, I have seen most of our clients come to the table with very little or even $0 at closing. Actually, quite a few of my clients get their earnest money check back at closing in a form of check. Now, your earnest money and your option money is always credited towards your closing costs, but oftentimes there's actually an excess of credits from the seller, so you actually get a check back at closing. That does happen. Now, I'm not going to say it happens every time. I'm not going to say it happens in every situation. I cannot promise you that, but I can say we do our very best to help you come to the table with as little as possible through negotiations, different loan programs, things like that. We want to make sure that you are coming to the closing table with as little as possible, nothing more than you actually need to. Now, of course, if you want to put more down payment, that's always better. We can't negotiate the seller to pay a down payment or anything like that. But as far as the closing cost goes, we can help try to negotiate those things down as little as possible for you. Now, moving on to how to check your credit the right way. Credit Karma is not an accurate representation of your credit. So let's just go ahead and delete Credit Karma, delete your account. No use to even go back in there. It is not accurate at all. At least the last I heard. Lenders use a very specific score, and it's called your FICO 254 scores. Now, you have TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. And within TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, you have different scores within those scores. It's really weird. I don't know why it works that way, but your mortgage scores are your 254 scores. And they're going to use the middle of those three scores to qualify you. So if you have a 620, a 630, and a 650, they're going to qualify you on the 630, okay? So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, My FICO is an app, and it is the only app I know that is the legitimate to actually give you your real mortgage scores. the actual mortgage scores that you will need when you go to buy a house. My lender told me about this when I was buying my first house, and I was like, why don't more people know about this? And since then, I have been sharing it with everybody. Yes, you do have to pay like $60 a month for it, but I definitely think it's worth the investment for whoever is going to be on the loan to make that investment for just a few months, 3 to 6 months while you're in the process of buying a house. You can delete it afterwards if you want. You can cancel it anytime. As far as I know, there's no contracts. And I have no partnership with my FICO, so I'm not getting paid to say any of this. But you do need to know your actual mortgage scores. Plus, on the top of that, they're not only going to show you your scores, you're going to get a full breakdown of what the lender sees as far as your debts and your credit report and all those things. If you have charge-offs, if you have bad credit, anything like that, it's going to show you, and it's going to show you what's contributing to like on-time payments versus late payments, all those things. So it's really important to see that information. So your mortgage score should be around 620, especially for a VA loan conventional. But I have seen approvals as low as 580, actually even as low as 540. So don't let a low credit score scare you. But do keep in mind, the lower your credit score, the more likely the higher your payment's going to be, or you might have to put more down payment, things like that. So just keep that in mind. If your score is not where it needs to be, that is okay. I can help you with tips on getting it raised. My husband and I raised our score significantly when we were going to buy our first house in a very short amount of time. Now, of course, everyone's situation is different, so sometimes it might take you a little bit longer, but we absolutely can help you with the tips and tricks that you can do to get it raised. So don't let it scare you. Let's actually talk about it. Let's communicate, and let's work on this together. Okay, so getting pre-approved. So this is the very first step, like I said, after you talk to me as your realtor, but it's actually more like the second step because we're going to go through and talk about finances first, right? But we're going to go ahead and get pre-approved. Now, why the pre-approval? The pre-approval will tell us if you are even qualified or what you need to do to get to be qualified. Now, let me tell you, I work with clients all the time who are not qualified, who think they could never buy a house, and we help them get to the point of being able to be qualified and being able to buy a house. Sometimes it takes 3 months, sometimes it takes 3 years, but that is what we are here for, to make sure that we are walking with you step by step by step. So if you put in this pre-approval and they say, no, you're not ready, that's fine. We're going to work on getting you ready. Don't count yourself out, because homeownership is an amazing, amazing tool for wealth building and just for creating a life-giving home in general. So don't count yourself out. It is a blessing if you are able to buy a home, and we want to help you get there. So it tells us if you're qualified, what you need to get there. It also tells us what you're qualified for. So we're only looking at homes that are realistically within your budget. And lastly, the pre-approval shows the seller that you are serious and able to actually buy their home. No serious seller is ever going to accept an offer from someone who doesn't have a pre-approval letter. So we're going to make sure we have that before we ever start touring homes. Okay. So here's a list of lenders that I recommend. You can read about them. You can call them. You can use any lender you want, even if they are not on this list. And sometimes my list does change. So if you download it now, you may see these. If you download it again in a few months, you may see a different lender, because I'm always updating it with the people that I believe are going to serve you the best as my client, because I want to make sure you are getting the absolute best experience possible. So this is my lender list. All 3 of these lenders are amazing lenders. I have worked with every single one of them, and they have gotten the job done when other people couldn't. So this is something you can look into. Now, I want to make this little caveat. If you can avoid it. Now, I don't want to put down any company. I can't bash any company, but I will say trying to avoid the big box lenders in the home buying process in some cases. Now, of course, if you want to, go to Navy Fed or USDA or whatever, get their fee sheet, get all that. If they can get you a better deal, definitely understand that. But just keep in mind, these are 9 to 5 lenders, and they get paid regardless of whether you close or not. Unlike a lot of the lenders we work with, they're commission only, which means they're working their butts off to make sure they resolve it. Unlike maybe someone who's a 9 to 5 who really doesn't care if you close on the house or not, because they're going to get paid regardless. So that's just something to keep in mind. I know that's the world we live in. It shouldn't be like that, but that is how it is. But of course, you can use absolutely anybody. I don't want to discourage you from using anybody. Definitely get the fee sheets, look at the numbers. If it makes more sense to go with the big lender, let's do that. Whatever it's going to take to get you in your home, that is what we are here for. Okay, types of financing. Now, I'm not going to read all this, but there's just a page that has the different most common types of financing, down payments required, and minimum credit scores, and then different down payment assistance programs that we can look into. Every lender offers different programs. So just because you see these, the lender you're using might not be working with these programs. And there might be some that I don't have listed here that they do work with. These are just some popular ones to consider. Moving on to income requirements. Now, again, I'm not going to break this down line by line, but I want you to be able to review it, what you're going to need for income, just a very basic overview. If you are a full-time employee, salary, 40 plus hour a week, whether it's hourly or salary. So qualifying income is going to be your W-2 income. You can use part-time income, 1099 income, dividend income, retirement income, all the things, right? Everything you see here, but there are different qualifications for what you need to show with this income. So for example, if you are a W-2 full-time salary employee, you really don't have like a minimum time on job that you need. You don't have to have a minimum of 2 years or anything like that, as long as you can prove that you are a full-time, either 40 plus hours a week or on salary. But if you're part-time, you need 2 years. If you're 1099, you need 2 years, right? So there's different qualifications. Now, some things that don't qualify for income are right here. So like unemployment, temporary income. One thing that's really important is if you are in the military and you're going to ETS in 2 years or less than your closing date, they cannot use your military income. So keep that in mind. If you are ETSing out of the military and you have been promised disability and you've already been awarded that, there are stipulations around if they can actually use it depending on when that disability is actually going to begin and kick in. So things we definitely have to talk with the lender about. I just wanted to give you this overview and some documents that you're going to need to get started in the process that the lender is going to ask for, just so you can be prepared. So I want to make a little caveat before we actually get to shopping. From now on, in order for any buyer to view a home with a realtor, you do have to sign a buyer's representation agreement. Now, we have multiple different types of representation agreements. One is a full agreement. One is like a 1-day just touring agreement. So there's different options that we have here, but just know if we are going to go see homes, I am going to have you legally sign this form. I don't have a choice. I could lose my license if I don't have you sign this form. And we will either do a full representation agreement or we will do a one-pager, hey, I'm just showing you this one property agreement, just depending on the situation. So time to shop. We have different types of home purchases here. We have your traditional resale house. We have new construction. We have foreclosure. We have short sales. With traditional resale, this is the most common. You're going to get 30 to 45 days of closing. It's a pretty smooth transaction. We can usually negotiate on your behalf. Same with new construction. It's pretty easy. We can negotiate some things, but some things are set in stone, but they are pretty smooth transactions. And you're looking at anywhere from a 30-day to 365-day plus closing, depending on the stage of construction, right? So those are the two most common types. But then we have foreclosures. So foreclosures are going to take a little bit longer. They're not as smooth because we're dealing with the bank and we have to wait for the bank to approve everything along the way. It's 100% as is. The bank is not making any repairs for you. And typically you're going to need to come to the closing with out-of-pocket expenses because they are likely not going to pay your closing costs, things like that. Same with a short sale. It's very similar, but they usually take even longer. They're called a short sale, but there's nothing short about them. They actually are a very long process. Could take 6 months, 12 months, even longer. So that's something to keep in mind. The bank is not going to pay your closing costs most of the time. There's just different things. And sometimes they will. It just really depends. But there's different things that are involved with a short sale. So in a foreclosure, the bank owns it. In a short sale, the seller still technically owns the property, but they have no say in the final numbers. The seller might accept your offer, but then they have to send it off to the bank and see if the bank is going to accept it. So those are some things to keep in mind with that. Now you've got your finances in order and we get to start shopping. So I want you to scan this QR code and download my MLS app, and it's going to ask you for a code, which is right here. And you can actually search everything that is actively available on the MLS right now. It's better than Zillow because it's actually in real time. Everything's on the MLS. You can save and favorite properties. You can send those over to me. And that is one way you can begin shopping. The next thing is you're going to receive homes in your email that I set up for you based on your search criteria. Now, I do my best to be as detailed as possible when setting up this search, but the system has limitations. So you might get some stuff in your inbox that like you wouldn't care for. I can't narrow it down 100%. As soon as you see a home you like, you're going to let me know and we will arrange a tour. Now, most homes do need a minimum of 24 hours to schedule unless they're vacant usually. So just keep that in mind. Have you guys searching for 2 or 3 days and kind of start favoriting and liking different properties. And then what I like to do is take one day or one evening or whatever, between 3 and 10 homes max, but 10 is kind of a lot in one day, but maybe 3 to 7 homes in one single day, right? And we're going to go through each home. We're going to put it on a scale of 1 to 10. We're going to rate it. Now, if we look at more than 5 homes and you hate them all, like none of them work for you, that's when we have to go back and readjust and say, okay, what is it that's not hitting about these properties? what is it that we have wrong in the criteria? Because obviously one of these homes should have been a good fit, right? Now, sometimes it could just be they're all trash and the MLS deceived us when whoever put the listing up. That could happen. But we just want to make sure we're staying on top of looking at properties you actually are going to be interested in. So I like to do that opposed to like piecemealing it. I mean, sure, we can go see one here and one here and one here and one here. And now, of course, my ideal day doesn't matter nearly as much as yours. What do you want to do the most? But honestly, it's a fun day to go out and look at houses all day. We just want to avoid seeing too many in one day because then they're going to all blur together. So you're going to start seeing homes that you like. We're going to schedule tours. We're going to go out and look at them. If you are not in the local area, that is fine. Over half of my buyers have been completely sight unseen, meaning I do a virtual video tour. I go in the property. I take a very good video. Now, I run a real estate media company, so I'm pretty good at taking video as well. So I go in, I take a really good detailed video where I'm looking under the cabinets, I'm looking in the closets, I'm looking in the drawers, I'm showing you the corners and the different angles of the house. We're looking at the front and the back. My husband sometimes will come out there with the drone and we'll get drone shots for you if we're able to that day. And we will send that to you. Now, I don't do this live on like a FaceTime. I send it pre-recorded. Why? Because you can pause, rewind, press play, slow down, zoom in, whatever you need to do to make sure you're seeing every angle of the property. And we will walk you through the entire home buying process completely sight unseen. We do that often. It is no big deal. Okay, I know we're already 30 minutes into this video, so let's go ahead and keep moving on. So finding your perfect home, I just want you to list out a few things of your must-haves and your want-to-haves. Now, keep in mind, your must-have features are the things that are not easy to change, right? If you have to have 4 bedrooms, we can't compromise on that. If you have to have a pool, we can't compromise on that because it's harder to put those things in later. However, things like cosmetic details, like the countertops not being granite or the paint colors, or maybe it doesn't have the right kind of floors, those things are easier to change in the future. Now, of course, your want-to-haves and must-haves could be different than what other people's are. That's totally fine. Just keep those things in mind. We just don't want to get to the point where like we're settling for, yeah, I can put that addition on later, or yeah, I could totally add a pool later when it's a big expense and a more hard expense. And then you end up resenting the property because you didn't get what you wanted in the first place. But also not being so over the top with the must-have features and realizing that we can paint, we can change countertops, we can change floors if you need to in the future and want to. You may decide, nope, I don't want to do any of that. I want completely turnkey, move-in ready, don't have to do anything property. And that's completely fine too. Home tour etiquette. So if you are local and we are going to tour homes, this is a page I want you to read through regarding how we should be touring the homes. One of the biggest things I want to point out here is please act and assume that the seller is recording audio and video. Even though legally they're not supposed to record audio, you never know. So when we're talking about the house, we're giving comments, opinions, whatever, we are not saying anything in the house. We're going to wait till we're past the driveway to talk about the house. That is something really important to remember. Now, of course, you can be like, oh, this is nice, or I like that, but we just don't want to show too over the top emotion, but we also don't want to show any like, I don't like this either, right? We want to make sure that we are keeping our negotiation position strong and not giving away too much. So just keep that in mind. Now on to making an offer. Ultimately, you should be making an offer when you actually walk into a house and you love it. You can see yourself and your family living there long term. It meets your needs. You're comfortable with the monthly payments, and maybe you have some work to put in the home. Maybe you don't. But you're comfortable with whatever that looks like. You're comfortable with the amount of work that needs to go in the home, the payments, and you can see your family living there. You love the area. You love the house itself. I always recommend praying before making a final decision. If you're not a person of faith, that's totally fine. You do not have to pray. This is just my recommendation. I think it's just really important to make sure God is first and foremost in that decision-making step. During my career, I have found that most people are ready to make an offer after about 4 homes on average, but some people, it can take longer, and some people find one and they love it the first time. If you, like I said earlier, if you've seen about 10 homes and you still haven't found the one, we need to readjust and figure out where the disconnect is. So how much should you offer? Now, this is something that we're going to walk through during every offer we make, whether you only have to make one and it gets accepted or if we have to keep trying, right? We are going to walk through these different parameters, and we are going to just make sure that you are putting in the right offer for that specific property. Now, some things that we negotiate for you, of course, sales price, how much earnest money to put down, how much option money to put down, who pays the different survey fees and title fees, are any repairs needed, do you want a professional cleaning done or landscaping, closing costs, non-realty items like do you want the fridge to stay, home warranty, contingencies, closing date, the list goes on and on. There's a lot we actually negotiate for you in the contract. Now, what is earnest money? We talked about this a little bit earlier. Earnest money is your good faith deposit. The more earnest money you put down, the more serious you look to sellers. So this money is held in an escrow account at the title company, and you will get it back credited to your closing costs at closing as long as you hold up your end of the contract and you go to closing as planned. If you back out for any reason outside of the allowable contingencies that are in the contract, you as the buyer may have to surrender your earnest money deposit. So this is the big amount of money that you don't want to lose. So when you put this earnest money down, there are a few contingencies within the contract that legally allow you to leave the contract and get that money back. But if you back out for any reason outside of that, you lose that earnest money. So we have to make sure we're serious when we're putting in an offer. Now, your option period is one of those contingencies that allows you to back out for any reason. This is a 5 to 15 day period, depending on what we negotiate in the contract. You can back out for literally any reason. I sneezed in the corner of the house and I didn't like that. Like literally any reason, no questions asked, and you retain your earnest money deposit. Now, of course, you lose your option money and you lose any fees you've paid for inspections or other services, but you will get that large earnest money deposit back. Now, this is your due diligence period. So during this option period, you want to make sure your inspections are done. We negotiate any repairs if needed. You've done research on the home insurance. We just want to make sure every single thing is done within this period so that you know for sure once that 5 days, 10 days, 15 days is over, you are ready and excited to get to the closing table. After the option period is over, getting out of the contract legally and retaining your earnest money is much more difficult. So make sure you are absolutely sure about buying this house during the option period. Now, what is a contingency? So a contingency clause within your contract is a contract that allows you to back out legally and retain your earnest money. So regardless of the contingency, we do always recommend consulting an attorney before canceling a contract. But some common contingencies are objections. So for example, at the time of the offer, we can put an objection that says livestock. And if the deed comes back and doesn't allow livestock, you can cancel the contract because we put that in there. Title and survey. There are certain stipulations that allow you to back out for title and survey issues. Your third-party financing addendum. If you can't get financing within certain parameters within a certain amount of time, you're able to back out of the contract. Again, if the appraisal comes back under the contract price, you may have to allow you to cancel the contract if the price value is not met on that appraisal. Your option period is another form of a contingency, like I just explained. And then the contingency of a sale of another home. So if you're trying to sell your home, but you need to buy this one as well, there's a certain amount of time given that you must sell and close on your new home. And if that's not met, you can back out. So these are some ways to protect yourself as the buyer. There's more contingencies, but these are just some of the common ones. So what happens after you put an offer? So if your offer is accepted, the seller takes your offer as is, earnest and option money are due, and the day the offer is accepted is day 0 according to the contract, okay? Because on the contract, you're going to have different timelines based on when the offer was accepted. So that offer being accepted counts as day 0. Okay, next, your offer could be countered, meaning the seller is not denying your offer, but they're coming back with changes and then we negotiate. Or your offer could be rejected or ignored. So a formal rejection is actually when they say no, right? And there's no negotiation, but sometimes they just don't respond at all. When this happens, we want to make sure we formally rescind by submitting a document that essentially says we are rescinding our offer, because unfortunately in the state of Texas, the seller could just never tell you anything and then 30 days later come back and say, yep, I've accepted your offer, because we don't have like a cutoff date here in Texas. So if we don't hear back within like 24 hours, whatever, we're going to put in that offer rescission letter. Now you're under contract. So what happens next? The next steps are we are going to pay our earnest and option money fee according to the contract. We're going to start ordering inspections. I will submit your contract to your loan officer to get your loan approval started. We'll submit the contract to the title company and we're going to get the ball rolling. Now remember, this is the step where you're going to be required to pay that money out of pocket that we talked about at the beginning, okay? Now, some inspectors that you can reach out to. Now, of course, you can reach out to any inspector you want, but these are just a few. Again, This information may change depending on when you view this document, because I like to keep this up to date with the best inspectors in the area that I have worked with. So here's just a few for now. And then the option period. So once you are under contract, time is of the essence. Like we said earlier, we're going to do every single thing we can to make sure you are ready to buy this home within the option period. We're going to do our due diligence, inspections, all the things. We are also going to get our home insurance quote and get a clue report run by the insurance company to make sure that the house is insurable and that it's not going to be too expensive, which would push you out of your approval. We want to get all that done within the option period. Now, very important note, if you don't turn in your option money, you don't have an option period to act on. So if your option money is not turned in, but you're trying to back out, say it's been 4 days and you didn't turn in your option money, you can't back out. You don't have an option period until that option fee is turned in. So keep that in mind. Again, some additional inspections that you might need are listed here. We talked a little about that earlier. And then next step is going to be your appraisal. So your appraisal is not the same as the inspection. The appraiser is going to be looking at the value of the home based on the area, the condition, market conditions, while an inspection is your in-depth look at the structure and the systems in the home. So your appraisal happens anytime after the offer is accepted. Usually after the option period, that's when the lender will go ahead and order that appraisal. Sometimes it's pretty fast, and sometimes we don't get the report back till the day before closing. Yes, real estate can be very unpredictable, but the lender is not going to loan you even a penny more than the appraiser says the house is worth. So the appraisal actually protects the lender. The appraised value can vary from appraiser to appraiser. Unfortunately, it is a pretty subjective process. So that's something to keep in mind when we're going to make offers on homes. An appraiser will be looking at, and hopefully we are making the right offer and we're not going to have to worry about any issues coming up with the appraisal. Now, the appraisal could come back as is, at sales price. That's what we want to happen. It means we're at the right price and no repairs are going to be needed. It could come back over sales price. That's great. That just means you have instant equity. It could come back under sales price. When this happens, we need to go back to negotiations, and you can either pay the difference in cash as the buyer, the seller could come on down on price, or you can meet in the middle. And then lastly, regardless of the price, it could come back as is or repairs needed. If repairs are required by the lender, that house is not going to closing unless they're done. But that does not mean the seller has to be the one that does them. So we go back to negotiation. We ask the seller to make those repairs. I would say most of the time, very often, the seller's willing to make those repairs because it is lender required, but sometimes they aren't. So that's something to keep in mind. VA and FHA loans are pretty strict when it comes to the condition of the house and the appraisal. So some things we want to look for when we're even shopping so that we know these things might be an issue are things like chipped paint, wood rot, water damage, leaks, cracks in the foundation, sticky doors, and noticeable issues to the roof or shingles coming up. And then all that's done, we are in finance pending. Actually, we're in finance pending like the day you submit your contract to the lender. So this is just super important that when the lender reaches out to you, you are providing any information that they ask for right away, because everything is super time sensitive at this point. Any delay can delay closing date. So just keep in mind that if the lender asks you for a document, even if you've already submitted it 5 times, which usually they don't do that, but just hypothetical situation, just go ahead and make sure you're getting everything submitted as soon as you can. Here's some do's and don'ts. I want you to read through this, but I'm going to go through the don'ts with you because this is super important. Don't add any balances to your credit card. Don't pay your credit card down to 0 even without asking your lender first. Don't open any new credit cards or any new accounts. Don't get a car loan or a loan of any kind. Don't co-sign for anyone for any kind of loan. And don't deposit or withdraw any large amount of monies that are outside of your usual deposits and bills, right? Because that can be a red flag with the lender. So if you want to do any of these things, buy furniture, anything, always check with the lender first, because even sometimes the smallest minute details can affect your final approval and actually delay closing or prevent closing altogether. One of the things we see often is gift funds. If you're going to be getting funds from anyone else to help you pay for your down payment, closing costs, whatever, you have to run that by the lender. Only a few certain people can give you gift funds, and they have to track where that payment's coming from. So say Aunt Susie gives you $500, you have to also get Aunt Susie's bank statements, right? There's a process we have to take here. So things to keep in mind. And then we're going to prepare for closing day. So I have a smooth closing checklist here that you can just read through, some things that need to happen to prepare for closing. We love these words, clear to close. When we hear those words, it's like the angels are singing, because this means that the lender has reviewed everything that they need to do and you are approved to go. You are ready to get to the closing table pending employment verification. Sometimes they do that the day of closing. So even after you get clear to close, don't go changing jobs, quitting jobs, none of that. Make sure you have signed your paperwork and it has funded before you do anything crazy. Now, final walkthrough, this is going to happen 1 to 2 days prior to closing. Sometimes we do it the same morning as closing. It just depends. We want to make sure the house is in same or better condition than when you first looked at it. If it is not, we don't want to go to closing, okay? We're going to verify that all the repairs were done, and then you're going to sign off on an acceptance letter that says you went through the final walkthrough and you approve its condition and you are ready to go to closing. Then you have closing day, and that is the most exciting day. All the hard work pays off. You're going to pay your closing fees, your down payment, or you might even get a check back at closing. And once the lender funds the transaction, which could be the same day, could be the next day, depending on how late you close, or the next business day, I should say, that's when you receive your keys and move in. So you don't always get to move in the same day of closing. Keep that in mind. And of course, if you are my client, we are going to celebrate. If you are buying a house with me, you are getting your closing day photos taken, which we could do on closing day or we could do it after, but I'm a professional photographer and I want to make sure that I'm getting you professional family photos done. We're going to do that on closing day. You're going to get a gift. You're going to get an experience, because I want to make sure that you know how important this day is and how special this is and how grateful I am that you chose to work with me. So closing day is also celebration day. Now, this is your post-closing checklist. This is just something that I want you to keep on hand. I want you to go through these things. When you buy a house, things get super hectic. So I will remind you of these things via email after closing as well. But this is just, to help you out a little bit. And then some additional information. So we have a list of vendors here that you might need during the process. I just have those here, different locations, post office locations, things like that. And then some information about me if you want to read through that. And compensation transparency. This is super important. So working with the buyer's agent is not technically free. The buyer's agent, so myself, we have a set fee that's going to be outlined in our buyer's representation agreement. That fee is negotiable, and we will talk about that when we meet one-on-one. But who actually pays that fee? So it lists it in the buyer's representation agreement that we make every effort to procure that fee from the seller. I would say 9.9 times out of 10, the seller is typically paying that fee, but it is negotiable. So when we write our offer, we are putting that as a part of our terms of our offer. Just like we might ask for closing costs, just like we might ask for a home warranty. This is one of those things we are putting as a term of the offer and asking the seller to pay on your behalf so that you are not paying it. My standard fee, now this is my fee. There is no legal fee required, or there's no legal set commissions, right? No agent or no brokerage is legally setting a commission. This is what my fee is set. Standard is 3%. But again, 100% negotiable within the contract when submitting an offer. That is something that you and I have to talk about like on a one-on-one basis, right? So currently, as it stands in a standard practice, most sellers are paying the buyer's agent fee. If you go new construction, builders are usually paying the buyer's agent fee. So some pay more, some pay less. Now, if the seller refuses to pay the entire fee, we will reconvene and discuss all the possible options. So say we put on our buyer's agreement that it's 3%, but the seller's saying I'm only paying 2%. Me and you, we're going to discuss what that looks like. We're going to discuss if, okay, fine, I just take the 2%, we lower the fee, or do you need to come up with the cash difference, whatever, right? We're going to look at that together and check on the situation. Or if the seller decides they're not paying any fee, you as the buyer, you could decide to go to a different home and make a different offer for someone who's going to pay the fee, right? There's so many different options here. I just wanted to be fully transparent about compensation because that is a big topic of discussion right now. So I personally have no problem negotiating my fee directly with the seller, and I assure you that this is not going to be an issue for you. And just some client reviews. If you want to look at that, you can also go to Google and see some more reviews. And this is just a glossary of real estate terms, some things that we might talk about in the process. This is just helpful information. You could read it, you could not. That is totally up to you. Again, thank you so much for trusting me with the purchase of your next home. I really do not take this lightly. Like, I really cannot explain how awesome it is to be able to help people with one of the most stressful times of their life, one of the most exciting times of their life, buying a home, selling homes. It's a big deal, and I don't take that lightly. So I want to make sure that you are comfortable every step of the way, that you are very well educated in the process, that I want you to know that I'm here for you. So you can call me, text me, email me with any questions or concerns. And I am so excited to work with you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Okay, wow, you made it this far, and that is a big accomplishment all on its own because this was a long video. So thank you for sticking through it with me. But what now? Now you reach out to your favorite local realtor. And if you don't have one, I would love to chat and see if we're actually a good fit to work together. And if you are ready to get going and you've already talked to me or your favorite realtor, the next step is most likely going to be getting that pre-approval started. So all my contact information will be below, and I'm so excited to chat with you. Talk to you soon.